Good morning, everyone. I hope it's sunny where you are. I'm in near Burton-on-Trent in a little village called Rangemore Village. This is where my parents live. So I guess we're not in the House of Lords this morning, and I apologize for that. But the advantage is that we can do this from the comfort of our own homes, and I'm lucky enough to be spending a little bit of time with my parents this week. So I'm doing it from their home. So firstly, thank you to all of you for making the time to join us. I think we've got about 200 people joining, and I'd like to welcome, first of all, I'd like to welcome Lord Bilimoria, Lord Curran Bilimoria. You can see him there saying hi. Hi, Curran, how are you? And then you
Hello,
can
good morning, everyone.
Good morning, and you can see Maurice Ostro. I'm going to introduce them formally. Maurice Ostro, OBE, I'm going to introduce them formally in just a few minutes, but I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about E2E and what we're all about, and thank you for taking the time to join us. So, to begin with, I think because there's quite a few new people here today, I wanted to talk to you about some of the initiatives that we're running with E2E. As you can probably tell, we've been doing a lot of live events. We've been doing virtually one event a week. Tomorrow night we have another one. It's with Lawson Muncaster, who founded City AM, and with John McGlynn. Hopefully you've heard of John McGlynn. He's one of the Scottish billionaires, and with a family friend of mine. Her name is Arthi Poddar, and she's running a business in mobile homes, which she's converted into hairdressing salons. So, in terms of the format of this morning, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about E2E, and then essentially after that, I would like to introduce Lord Bilimoria formally, and he's going to say a few words around why we do these events and what E2E is a little bit about, and then we'll move across to Maurice. And Maurice has got a very, very interesting history, which I'll introduce to you. So, just to tell you a little bit about us, E2E I started in 2011. We're now a community of 23,000 people. We contribute 213 billion to the UK economy, and we employ 1.15 million people. What we're about is access to capital. This is financial capital, human capital, and technology and access to corporate services. We're lucky to be supported by a large number of corporate partners, and our mission and our passion, I hope everyone will have heard of Match.com, but hopefully if that rings a bell with you, our mission is to be the equivalent of a Match.com for business. So we like to connect people. We like to be at the heart of making a huge difference to the ecosystem of support that founders need. We've been through a very, very difficult time, and we're continuing to go through a difficult time right now. And it's through this camaraderie, through this collaboration, and through supporting one another. And that's why I'm hugely thankful for people like Lord Bilimoria and Maurice, who are doing a massive amount to support the UK economy. Maurice will talk about some of his work with the Business Action Council. The Business Action Council has been set up very recently. He is the person who's instigated that. He started that in March this year. I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity over the last 6 months to work with him. I'm chairing one of his 14 subgroups. I'm chairing the one on the employee retention scheme, and hopefully many of you have benefited from one of the successes we had lately, which was Flexi Furlough. And you'll have heard the Chancellor speaking a couple of weeks ago now in his winter economic statement about the new short-time working directive that's come out, which enables a top-up of financing from the government for people who are going on part-time work to avoid redundancies. That was the second policy paper that my subcommittee and I put forward, that was signed off by Maurice and also by Lord Bilimoria, and we were lucky that the Chancellors agreed to that. So as you can sense, I'm giving you a flavour of the volume of effort that both Maurice Ostro and Lord Bilimoria have been putting into making sure that the COVID packages during this difficult time are fit for business. And this is, I think, an unprecedented opportunity to have the chance to speak to them both. As you'll know, Maurice and Curran, we have sort of the who's who of entrepreneurship. There are a few people from our advisory board on today. There are a few people from all around the world, actually, from different countries. So I'm really glad to be able to have this opportunity to share your work with them and your stories with them, but also have a very interactive session. So in terms of the format, what I'd suggest is once Maurice has said his opening remarks, I'd ask people to use the function in the Zoom function, which is to raise your hand. If you raise your hand, what we'll make sure is that you have a chance to go live as a panelist. If you'd like to put your camera on, we can do that. If you're not wearing your makeup and you don't want to be on camera, no problem at all. And we can do it just in terms of audio. So that's the way I'd like to run the morning. Also, please feel free to use the Q&A function. My colleagues, Sean Dolan is on, Ismail Ibrahim is on, I think Dana Achor, she's also on, as well as my other team. So please feel free to use the chat. So that's how we'd like to run it. So before further ado, and also we'll run a poll. Lord Bilimoria, I'm trying to see if we can gain more information around how we can work together with the CBI. So in the poll, there's a question also related to the CBI. So we'll run a poll during the interactive session and share the feedback with you, if that's okay. So without further ado, I'd like to go on to introduce Lord Bilimoria. Now, he doesn't really need much introduction. He's the gentleman who is now the president of the CBI. He is the co-founder of Cobra beer. He's the Chancellor of Birmingham University. And I'm very fortunate he's one of our founding board directors. I'm lucky enough to call him a friend. In 1989, at the age of 27, only 27, with £20,000 in debt, Lord Bilimoria launched Cobra beer. By November 2014, Cobra beer had a market share of 98% of all the licensed restaurants within the United Kingdom. Lord Bilimoria was appointed Lord Bilimoria of Chelsea, making him the first ever Zoroastrian to sit at the House of Lords. In 2008, he was awarded one of India's highest awards by the President of India. That's the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman. He's an honorary fellow of Sydney Sussex College, Cambridge. He's a member of the advisory boards of Judge Business School at Cambridge. He's a qualified chartered accountant. He holds a law degree from the University of Cambridge. And if I tell you I've just scratched the surface of who he is, I'm genuinely telling you the truth. So Lord Bilimoria, thank you. You have enabled us to make this business what it is today. And I wholeheartedly thank you for all of these events that you've been holding for us, both physically and virtually. I'll hand over to you. Thank you, Lord Bilimoria.
Thanks, Shalini. Thank you very much. And at the outset, thank you for what you do for EGE, for founding it, for championing it so committedly and enthusiastically. And it's amazing. What you're doing is for the benefit of entrepreneurs throughout the UK and quite frankly, globally. My apologies right up front in that this event is held at the House of Lords. And those of you who've attended these events before, they are always standing room only. We have one of the committee rooms in the House of Lords, and it's fantastic. We always have such a wide range of people in the entrepreneurial community present, and we always have a very rich discussion. And I can assure you, we always go away having learnt a huge amount and also made lots of new connections. And I can assure you that in spite of not being in the House of Lords, we will do the same over the next hour and a half or so that we're together. And it's my great privilege that we have together with us today my friend, one of my best friends and closest friends, Maurice Ostro, I've known Maurice for 2 decades. We are in the same YPO Young Presidents Organization forum, and we are very, very good friends. And I have seen firsthand what Maurice has achieved as an entrepreneur, a hugely successful entrepreneur. I hope he will share some of his entrepreneurial stories, including his early days. He's a unique individual. I've been to 7 schools. Maurice has been to, I think, over 30 schools. He's lived all over the world from his childhood, has a truly global outlook. But what is really important, and I think it's come to the fore in this crisis since March, is when you have people like Maurice who think beyond their business, it's amazing how much you can add value to the country as a whole. And I'm not speaking in platitudes here. So here he not only founded, sold, runs businesses, but he's a genuine philanthropist for his own community and generally. He's a passionate believer in interfaith harmony and championing interfaith, and has founded Interfaith Fora, which he will talk about. Then he's also involved in championing entrepreneurship and business as such. And in the crisis, when you can do two things in a crisis, you can duck out of it and say this is all too much and it's horrible, and people will just bury their heads in sand. That is one approach, and it's quite a normal, understandable approach if you do that. And the other is if you rise to the challenge and you try and do something to make a difference. And Maurice has done that through forming the Business Action Council, of which I'm a founding member, and so is Shalini. And what he's done is what no one else has done in the history of this country, to my knowledge, is brought together over 30 of the leading business organizations in this country round the table, and including the CBI, which I'm proud to be president of. So we will talk about the Business Action Council and the difference that we've made and are making. And you know, in my case, I am really privileged and proud to be president of the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, and it's the first time somebody from the ethnic minorities has done it. And wait for this, it's the first time that an entrepreneur has been president of the CBI. Normally, it's somebody who's around 70 plus, 70 years old, FTSE 100 chair, very respected, respectable individuals, and that's been the case normally. And they've broken the mold this time, and what a time to do it. And it's pure serendipity that it happens to be in this crisis. And I found that entrepreneurial experience, I found the experience of myself having nearly lost my business 3 times, has really come to the fore in being able to help out in this crisis, whether it's in championing, and when I think, and I'm not boasting about this, I just happened to be the first person in the country to say the government would need to give 100% guaranteed loans to save businesses and give them the cash to survive. Initially, the government didn't listen. They did 80% guarantees with the CBILS loans. The money wasn't flowing through enough. And eventually they did listen, and we had the bounce back loans, which are 100% guaranteed up to £50,000. Over 1.2 million of those loans have been given, saving thousands, hundreds of thousands of businesses. And similarly, with the entrepreneurial mindset, our mindset is very much, yep, there are problems, but what's the solution? There's no point complaining about problems. What are you going to do about it? And that's why it's called the Business Action Council, because we believe in action. For example, testing. You probably hear every day on the radio this morning, whether it's Radio 4 and the papers, the huge issues we're having with testing. And one of the things that I've been championing, we've been championing, is to have mass testing. Why don't we have mass testing? America is producing 15-minute tests, and we can talk about this more in the Q&A. $5 15-minute test. I believe it's one of those tests that the White House has every day that discover that Donald Trump had COVID. So those tests are being produced by a company like Abbott Laboratories in America, called the Binax test, $5, 15 minutes, you know whether you've got COVID or not, antigen test. If they produced 10 million of them last month, they're producing 50 million of them per month. Countries like Greece, the Prime Minister of Greece has actually ordered them. Now, why are we not bringing tests like that online, that we can have mass testing in our businesses, in our hospitals, care homes, at airports, factories, universities, schools, where you know within 15 minutes whether you've got COVID or not. And if you do it regularly, twice a week, once a week, it's affordable. The government can in fact afford to give them away. It'll be much cheaper than the hundreds of billions we're spending at the moment supporting the economy, let alone the huge drop in the economy. If we can get the economy firing on all cylinders safely, with something like mass testing is something we have been pushing for. And Maurice, for example, organized for the head of the testing, Dido Harding, to attend one of our Business Action Council. We were able to challenge her about this. And ironically, that was on a Friday, and on the Monday, the government announced mass testing would be a priority. So I'm sure we had something to do with it. So these are the sort of areas that I would like to discuss about how we're going to help, how we're going to get through it. It's that Winston Churchill saying that if you're going through hell, keep going. And we've got to keep going. And we've got to come up with these solutions. The last point I want to make before handing over to Maurice is this aspect of doing more than just your business. And if one can do more, you can add more. So in my case, I still am passionate about Cobra beer. I mean, I've been through a horrible time with my restaurants being 7,000 restaurants, 2/3 of our business, for 3.5 months from the 23rd of March until Independence Day on the 4th of July. We were shut. I mean, that was zero business. My customers suffered enormously. And it's in that scenario, how can you survive? How can you be resilient? How can you help your customers? And how can you bounce back when you're allowed to open up again with your production being curtailed, relying only on the supermarkets, relying only on one SKU, the big bottle Cobra in the supermarkets, and then ramping up again, and then the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, and then being proactive and having our own extension of it. How do you do that as an entrepreneurial business? Secondly, the House of Lords. Every single day, I'm going to be speaking today. Sometimes I speak 2 or 3 times a day in this virtual House of Lords, hybrid House of Lords that we have now, challenging government throughout to do with this crisis. And then, of course, with being Chancellor of the University of Birmingham, we're at the heart of testing. So I had a small role to play in making sure the Birmingham professors supervised the testing that enabled the Premier League to finish its season and finish all the matches by having testing. And we did that, 42,000 tests, about 50 people positive, no game was cancelled, and we finished the season. So I've got my role at Birmingham, which is adding value to this now as well. And of course, with the CBI, we're right in the thick of it every single day. So I will leave it there, and I look forward to discussion. Great to be with all of you. Thank you very much.
Lord Bilimoria, thank you. And can I say it was such a great thing to be able to work with you on the letter that we wrote to the Chancellor, which effectively initiated the bounce back loan. And what's been even better for our members to kind of take note of, if they haven't heard, is that a lot of these lending facilities, C-bills, bounce back loans, they have been extended. So if you haven't had the opportunity to use them and you feel comfortable that you can repay the loan, please don't hesitate to drop me or any of the team a line so we can tell you a little bit more about them. So it was a real, it felt brilliant to have the opportunity to work with you, Lord Bilimoria, on that, as well as the employee retention scheme. So thank you very much. And I'm hoping that we get into a very a detailed discussion on the testing and other initiatives in a few minutes. Now it's my huge pleasure. I'm going to tell you a little bit of about Maurice Ostro, OBE. I think you've heard some great things from Lord Bilimoria, and it's fantastic to have 2 friends joining us, but it's also been massive pleasure to work with Maurice, and through this I've had the opportunity, Maurice, to get to know you better, and there's so much I've learnt through that process, and I absolutely support what Lord Bilimoria has said. It's what you're doing is something way beyond your day job. It's something to bring the country together and to help us collaborate in terms of trying to get the economy back on track. So a little bit about Maurice Ostro. Maurice, as Lord Bilimoria said, he's a serial entrepreneur in commercial and charitable spheres, looking for innovative solutions to complex problems. His businesses have a commitment to positive social impact, and he also uses his commercial perspective to create sustainable charitable activities. And Lord Bilimoria talked about Maurice's contribution in terms of philanthropy. Maurice has created several companies in fields ranging from gemstones, ice cream, food manufacturing, media, and logistics for the aviation industry. So if you're in any of those sectors, this is the man who has built businesses from scratch and grown them in those sectors. He's the founder of Air Fayre, which changed the model for the airline catering industry globally. So if you've been enjoying good food on airlines, I think a lot of that credit can go to Maurice. He invented and patented products and business methodologies internationally and won multiple international awards for his business and charitable achievements. Maurice has been involved in advising several government bodies, latterly, as Lord Bilimoria talked about and I've mentioned, on the Prime Minister's Business Action Council, on the Prime Minister's Holocaust Commission, as well as having been a mentor for Scotland Yard. I didn't know that, so that's something new I've learned recently, Maurice. He's served the Young Presidents Organisation in a variety of different roles internationally and has numerous communal involvements. He's very, very active with the YPO and someone who's very well regarded within that community. Maurice has 3 degrees, including an MA from Oxford. He's qualified as an attorney at law, admitted to the New York Bar, and is an alumnus of New York University and Harvard Business School. He was appointed Order of the British Empire, and he has a Knight of the Royal Order of Francis I in 2014. And once again, huge pleasure to have my friend and Maurice talk to us about some of the things that he's done throughout his career. Maurice, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shalini, and thank you, Karen. I'm not sure what there is for me left to say. I think more and some. And even though I didn't get what I was promised, which was breakfast in the House of Lords, I think this morning I will forgive you. And in my humble abode, rather than the august institution that Karen sits within, it is still, it's a different way. I mean, this whole this year has been so remarkable for so many people, and credit to you both for the huge amount of work that you have done in helping what is the lifeblood of our economy, which is the entrepreneurial sector. It is quite remarkable when you look at the statistics and you realize that while the focus very often sits, and understandably, because some of the large corporates have such a significant effect as individual corporates, but it is the vast majority of business, of smaller businesses, of entrepreneurs, of these smaller enterprises, that is the lifeblood. And in this time in history, I think it will be those entrepreneurial organizations that will see us through this crisis and ensure that we come, we really do build back and build back better as well. So I think that for all of your members in E2E, it is hugely important to connect continuously, always looking for ways how you can learn from the insights of others, connect with one another, collaborate. Most of my businesses have always been collaborative, and indeed you've mentioned the Business Action Council. Again, it is a collaborative venture. It's not controlled by me, not, I may have instigated it. The Prime Minister did want to hear consensus from British business. And it's not because, and we have to be careful, we have to be a bit modest, I think, in our claims, because success has many fathers. But there is one thing that is certain, which is that while many people are feeding in information to government, at a time like this, there's a lot of noise. And the opportunity to bring some weight to recommendations, to provide to government some sense of insight that this is not about trying to advocate for one's own constituency, one's own particular part of the economy or one's own business, but rather getting a sense of what this country really needs. And Karen's mentioned testing, which I'm sure will come up in the conversations today, and other things. But I will just say that the Business Action Council, with its now 32 business organizations, do have representation for the vast majority of UK businesses. So that goes from the CBI, your own E2E, Shalini, the Federation of Small Business, Make UK, Institute of Directors, British Chamber of Commerce. There's quite a lot of different, and frankly, it's important. It's very important. I don't think there's an exclusive, you need to join just one. I think you'll find a lot of entrepreneurs, besides the two of you, who are really plugged in, and they do it through multiple touch points. So their trade associations, and their and the ones that in our the Business Action Council span the industries from tech to hospitality, energy to agriculture, London-based financial services, and Scottish entrepreneurs. It's the whole range. And so therefore for government, it's helpful because they're not seeing just a microcosm, they're not just seeing a very narrow advocacy, which they hear plenty of. And the larger corporates, of course, have the most access for, I suppose, obvious reasons. And so what you have helped, and particularly pay tribute to Karen, because the CBI, so there are of these organizations, and of the 32 in the back, there is the B5, the big five, which are the ones I just, some of the ones I just mentioned. There is always an inclination, if you are the dominant player, or one of the dominant players, to hold that ground, to keep people out. So once you're in that little club, you want to keep people out. And when people come in a situation, we had this terrible crisis, coming that was going to affect the entire economy, but particularly smaller businesses. Because a larger company will, over time, have developed, if it's been successful, some reserves. It has the resources, it has the ability, the banking relationships. It has what it needs to be able to survive through some of these dips. And this one has been a mega dip. So the smaller businesses, without that, need the most support. And when you get organizations like the CBI, and Karen was coming into this at a very interesting moment, because he had not yet been made president. He was a president-elect, but there's still a process to go through. But he put his neck out and said, no, we need to be, we're not going to sit and say, let the little guys fend for themselves. We have a voice. Government can hear us. We have access. We'll keep that for ourselves. He did extend and say, no, this is right. It's important that all industries are represented, the smallest businesses as well. And I think that is a testament not only to him and his character, but I think what's really important for those on the call you mentioned, the importance for us as entrepreneurs to go outside our own little bubbles and our focus on our business. Key, but no one will detract from that. If you're going to be a success, you have to be really focused and put everything into your business. But at the same time, it's like if you have more than one child, you don't, there's not, you have a certain amount of love. The love grows. It's the same as an entrepreneur. It's amazing. You find, you're so focused on one thing and then you find something else. You manage to do that too. You think, how's that possible? You only have the finite capacity, but we do. We have a huge amount of capacity that you don't really know, you haven't really tapped into until you've looked beyond yourself, if you look outside of your community. And so much of that has rebounded positively on many other people. There was, some of you might remember, know even today, Lord David Young of Gratham, who was an advisor going back as far as Thatcher, and then even to David Cameron, who used to have an office in number 10 in David Cameron's time as well. We just spoke recently, and he was, he always tells me how the best thing he did, and he was chairman of Cable and Wireless, this, that, the other, I can't tell you all the things he did, but he always said what made his life so different was spending time, whether it was the time he did in government or in the charity sector where he was hugely engaged. That's what really made the biggest difference to his life. And I think that, so I welcome everybody to engage in whatever areas they are working with, but looking sort of beyond that as well. I'll just spend a few minutes, if I may, just a little bit of background on I think in terms of my business career, as an entrepreneur, I've done nothing other than just take advantage of opportunities when they come. And when I was in the ice cream business, and we had the absolutely diabolical, I mean, who wants to start an ice cream business in England? I had a ridiculous thing, I gained weight very easily. So when I go to America, I was always buying frozen yogurt, and they didn't have it here. So I thought, I'll bring frozen yogurt here to this country. And of course, it didn't occur to me, and it very often doesn't happen to entrepreneurs. Thank God you don't know all the risks. If you did, you'd never do it. And it was ridiculous because England is not a place with great weather. And we used to sit all the time just praying for sunshine, which of course didn't happen. So eventually out of desperation, we just couldn't make it work. It was years and years I wasn't making anything. We were living hand to mouth for years. And what we ended up doing was I said, well, where can I get some consistency? And I looked at the airlines. I thought, airlines were in those days, airlines actually gave you something. Today, if you fly first class from a long haul on British Airways, you get a little box. In those days, that would have been the sort of thing that you get in economy. Now, okay, to be fair, with COVID, they have to introduce these new restrictions, but there has been a massive diminution in the provision of onboard services since I guess through SARS, all that probably kicked it off. So this has been going on for a while, and I think COVID has definitely been the last nail in that coffin. But I would say that what was interesting, so I went to the airlines, And I said, you know, you guys sometimes, because they did, they used to, maybe you're too young to remember this, but they actually used to give you ice cream on planes. And even in economy, you know, during the films, they used to go out. Remember, they used to have those drop-down screens and things. But anyway, so you remember that, you must have been a baby. But in any event, the idea of selling on an airline was sensible because you're not reliant on the weather. Because in 30,000 feet, your choice is yes or no. It's not, you know, what you want to have. It's whatever they give you, and you can either have it or not. And so, if somebody is giving you a free ice cream, it's gone, right? And even if they don't eat it, it doesn't matter because you've sold it. So it was a great little business. And but it came out of looking for opportunities, and I had to sort of invent a box in order to, because there weren't freezers. And even today, most airlines, most aircraft don't have freezers, but certainly at the time they didn't. And so we had to find a way to provide the cooling that will keep it for a long period. If you're going to Australia, it's a long time before you're going to see a freezer. So the idea was always just looking for that opportunity to deal with the issue. Have an ice cream business, weather's terrible, can't sell, I'm in desperate straits, what do I do? Look for places, and people thought that's crazy, you know, that's not an airline, and it did, it really took off, and we ended up being the largest supplier of ice cream to the aviation industry around the world. And from that, I ended up in airline catering, and like you mentioned, Karen, on a number of occasions we've talked about it. I mean, it's really quite funny, because I look today, when I explain to people what I did, and they say, well, firstly, I patented this methodology of making everything in a sort of a logistics-centric manner rather than a production-centric. So in other words, instead of having kitchens making everything, I would buy in. Very simple concept, but it was patentable because nobody had done it. And what was interesting is, and today you look around and everything comes in boxes and things like that. But years ago, no, everything was made in kitchens. So it was completely inefficient. The quality was incredibly erratic. So we were dealing with a lot of issues, and of course, much more expensive than if you had large manufacturers. So we bought, you know, we were selling a few million sandwiches to just one airline a year. Well, the bigger food manufacturers were doing hundreds of millions, and so even though it sounds a lot, a few million sandwiches, actually in scale it was fairly limited. So my entrepreneurial history was, but the way we did it was collaborative. So it wasn't about, oh, we're going to make everything ourselves. It was like, so who's the best company who can make salads or sandwiches or even the little canapes? We used to buy the canapes from a wonderful company called Canapeum in Park Royal. We used to supply Buckingham Palace for the garden parties with these little canapes. Yeah, to surprise, the Queen doesn't actually make them herself. So we had, you know, it was a very collaborative thing, and we really embraced all these people who said, look, we're just part of the chain. We're just the logistics provider. And I think that's been my ethos through all of my businesses, the media distribution business, which I created. So if you go on Eurostar today, it's still the same as my old company. I mean, when they got big and I was running a publicly listed company on the London Stock Exchange, I thought that was it. That's not me. I am an entrepreneur, so I sold my companies bit by bit when they got to a certain size, because I really liked the energy, the excitement of that, you know, that pivoting, that trying to find new ways to do things. And we did it, but all of them, I think if you look at including sort of Media on the Move, that distribution, it was always by collaborating with others. It was all, how do we connect with others? How do we tap in? Don't have to recreate what others are doing so well. Just find a way of enhancing that and bringing in that expertise to make what you do even better. And in a sense, the Business Action Council is much the same. The work that you did, Shalini, as chair of the Employee Retention Working Group, and there were others, development of peer networks, which we can touch on, real estate and other working groups. The important point is not that you might have invented a new idea. It doesn't matter. The point was CBI, the Federation of Small Business Making, all these organizations chambers of commerce, many of them may have the very same idea. The important point is, how do you make it land? How do you actually turn good ideas into reality, into something that has an impact? So if you had sat by yourself, as did all the other organizations, it might eventually have filtered through the same idea, because they hear it from so many different people. But by collaborating, by saying, hey, we're going to do this together, for government who gets there's a lot of noise out there, and trying to distinguish those bits of consensus, as we know the Prime Minister asked for that when he returned from his convalescence, saying, come on guys, we know we've got an economic crisis, how are we going to work out what are the things that we really need to focus on? And by doing that together, that enabled things to happen a lot more effectively and a lot faster. And speed matters. It's, as we all know, that perfection is the enemy of progress. Until you get it just perfect, what you got to do, it's like as an entrepreneur, it's the same. You've just got to jump in there, and if it isn't quite right, you then pivot. You don't say, well, let's sit here until I've got it absolutely right, and then I'm going to, because by then it's too late. Other people have gone in there and done whatever it is that you were planning, probably at first. And I'll mention just quickly that some of those recommendations that were formed, of course, the back was formed on the hoof. It had to be, because stuff happened that nobody had planned. But if you channel that spirit and you focus on those policies that support entrepreneurs and the small business owners, so that's the key, then we have a chance to enable that incredible ecosystem to flourish, because they're the little ones who can pivot so quickly. The larger corporates are like super tankers, and getting them to change direction, of course it can happen because they've got the best strategic advice from the top consultancies, but it takes time. The smaller businesses are the ones that can change like that. And they're the ones that we need to ensure are enabled to provide the solutions that this new economy, whether it's Brexit, if we're allowed to mention that word, or dealing with the COVID crisis, or any other crisis that comes our way, we are a very entrepreneurial nation. And I have huge confidence that in the right ecosystem, the provision of support for that sector, we will be able to power out of this crisis and any other. And it's not just around businesses. And I'll just mention, in regards to interfaith, that about the same time we started the Business Action Council, we founded something called Faiths United. And whereas there are many interfaith organizations that have developed over the years, a lot of that is about social cohesion, because as a country, we are incredibly diverse. And I don't just mean London. I mean, obviously London is probably I would say probably, but the Prime Minister, when he was Mayor of London, was always saying, no, we are absolutely the most diverse country, and all the statistics, how many languages are spoken here, every faith, everybody is here. And at the heart of interfaith is the simple principle of collaboration. How do you get, and when I started before the Prime Minister, when he was the mayor at the Faith Forum for London, it was all about how do we tap in to the huge amount of good work that happens. And guess what? The biggest volunteer army in any country, it doesn't matter where you look, will always be those from faith institutions. You look at the faith sector, they're the ones who are providing the huge amount of voluntary support. As it happens, we just did a survey across the country with a reputable and very well respected company and the statistic that most struck me was that, whereas what I say is a given across the world, that faith communities provide the greatest amount of volunteer activity, during the crisis, it evened out. So whereas the norm would be secular society here and faith institutions there, actually, during COVID, everyone stepped up. It is remarkable how many people jumped in to do good things. But we did also feel that it's very important that we didn't just focus on business, because some of the key issues are about social cohesion, because in times of crisis, you also have significant risk. Historically, you've always found when there are things going very badly economically and people feel disempowered, they feel helpless and frustrated, it unleashes, unfortunately, a huge amount of negativity. And very often it's the scapegoats they're looking for, and it's the minority communities. So we did focus with Faith United on bringing together similar, so we have 40 faith leaders, and we bring in the ministers and things to focus on areas where we did. And one last thing, which I'll just mention, my own little pet project, and Karen's right, you know, sometimes you have at the right time, you have to say the right thing, and then you see it's amazing. If you come in at the right time and things are going your way, sometimes that's just the tipping point that enables people to make that key decision. And I remember going into number 10, and I sat I had here, and I came up with this idea that we should do some sort of face coverings. This is the Winston Churchill one that we did. We had Picasso, and then a sort of funny one from Einstein. And we just thought wanted to do something amusing. This is way back in the early days of March, where people were saying, this face covering thing, it doesn't make sense, we don't like it, nobody wants it. And I went in and I gave a whole bunch to the Prime Minister and in the office of these things. I said, look, I don't know if it's going to work, right? But instinctively it tells me that if you're wearing something, you're not going to be able to sneeze on somebody and help transmit. I'm not a scientist, but it just seemed to me common sense. And now we all look at each other and say, well, of course, but please wind back just a few months. And I promise you, people would think I was absolutely balmy when I was saying this. And I even went to, we've got this great acclaimed artist, Ron Arad, and I said, look, let's do, he and I spoke. He wanted to do something very artistic. I thought this is a great idea. Let's do this and we can help. And obviously it's all for charity. And we did it for NHS together. But the idea was help support our institutions, but also protect other people. And so that's what we've done on Facebook. So that's all those are my comments. I leave to you to advise where you want to sort of guide the conversation.
Thank you so much, Maurice. It was very, very good way to start the day. It's made me think a lot about different sectors, different religions, different faiths, and how actually important this kind of thing is in terms of both business and general life. So I really appreciate you bringing this in. And I think what we'll do is we'll do the poll first, if you wouldn't mind. And then I know there's a series, people have already got their hands. The Q&A is active. So I'm going to start with the poll. Stephen, if I could ask you to launch the poll. We'll do that very quickly, and then I'll share the results of the poll towards the end. So this is first question. I'm interested in E2E because, and you can choose multiple choice. Which of the below services would you need the most of? So in terms of interest in E2E, I'll just read them out. The events are very informative, valuable, high quality connections. I make use of the membership benefits. None of the above. If it's none of the above, send us an email and say what you'd like. Number 2, which of the below services would you need the most? Business services, consultations with lawyers, accountants, consultants, etc. Receiving flexi mentoring, finding a non-exec director, meeting like-minded people, fundraising, offering your services to our members, or none of the above. And just for clarity, all of the things above we do. So it's not just events, it's a lot more than that. So do get in touch if any of those things are important to you. Number 3, which of the following services would benefit you? Real and private market data, sales intelligence software, digital marketing support, web hosting, customer relationship management software, startup and SME intelligence data, none of the above. Just so that you know, we've got like $10,000 worth of free CRM support. We've got free marketing, digital marketing support. There's a suite of benefits for people who are new and not members of E2E on this webinar. There's about 200 people who have registered, so hopefully there's quite a few new people on. Would you benefit from discounted access to virtual offices and meeting rooms? If yes, put yes. If no, put no. Just so that everybody knows, we have a partnership with IWG. We offer 3 months free on any of their virtual packages and physical packages, plus unlimited access to their business lounges anywhere in the UK, including their airport lounges. That's unlimited access for 6 months. And finally, and very importantly, are you interested in discounted membership to the CBI? We are working with Lord Bilimoria. CBI is, as Maurice has also said, the leading organisation in the UK to support business, and we're very proud to be partnering with them. So it's 6 months free membership to the CBI as long as you're a member of E2E. So that is our collaboration. So if it's of interest, tick yes, and we'll follow up with you. If not, say no. So I will leave it at that. And Lord Bilimoria, thank you for that partnership that we've put together. So I'm going to go on to the Q&A. First of all, I'd like to kick off, if I may, with David Sear. And then I think Eunice Malik has got a question, followed in the Q&A. So Robin Carlisle, you've put a question, a couple of questions. Julie, you've put a couple of questions. I'd also like to say in the audience, we've got people from virtually, I think, 30 different sectors of the UK economy. So Judy Nake founded Saint-Tropez. She is on the webinar. Mira Santoro, who Maurice, I believe you know, she's on the webinar. She founded Santoro, 100 million turnover business. Dinesh Damija is on. Demetrius Hastis is also on. I'm just mentioning a few of you so that we can get a bit more of a interactive conversation going. So let me start with David Sear, if I may. David, are you there? We'll turn your video on. Would you like that? We may have a 2-second, 3-second delay whilst that's happening. David, are you there? Let me come back to David then, and we'll go to Eunice Malik. Eunice, are you live?
Shalini, I think I'm here now. So.
Oh, David, great. Fabulous. Well, David, firstly, thank you for your support of E2E. David has spoken for us many times. He is the founder of WellPay. I know we're going to talk about VAT. So let me ask you to say something about yourself very quickly, and then your questions and comments, please.
Yeah, sure. And thanks very much for hosting this wonderful event, by the way. And it was so amazing to hear the optimism on this call. You know, I rattle on about optimism when I speak for E2E, but I think it's like the lifeblood of entrepreneurship in this country, and indeed in any country. So fantastic to hear everybody being positive about how to push forward the business agenda in this particular environment. As you rightly said, I was one of the founders of WellPay, and actually I've been a pioneer in internet and e-commerce and mobile shopping as well, and have developed several different payments businesses over the last 20 years. So that's really my background, and it's sort of something of an irony, which is that I'm here this morning to talk to you and plead with you to save British retail, because we've literally got 3 months to save the high street in this country. The government, probably because it has many other things to do, has made a decision to end the VAT retail export scheme. We're going to be one of the only developed countries in the world that doesn't have a scheme like this at the end of the year. We're going to lose £6 billion in tourist spending, and that's a conservative estimate, by the way. 140,000 jobs are at risk. And in a survey that we've recently done, 93% of international visitors are going to be less likely to spend money here. They're going to spend it in Paris. They're going to spend it in Milan, basically. There's the people buying luxury goods predominantly, and then claiming the VAT refund back. The worst part of all is that 60% won't come at all. So tourism in this country after being devastated by COVID, and retail in this country, after being devastated by Amazon and COVID, are going to take years to even get back to recovery, and probably won't recover at all. It may surprise you that one of the top 3 destinations for foreign tourists in this country is Bicester Village. And Bicester Village will not exist if this change goes ahead. Now, I'm being told by people who are in a business that I help to manage on the board of, called Planet, which does international payments and processes some of the VAT refunds. We won't be really that much affected by this because the volume will go to other countries which we serve. So it isn't a self-serving plea. I'm being told that we should just wait and the government will change its mind next year. But I just don't think that's good enough. You know, in this world where we've seen retail almost killed by this virus and was already suffering from horrible tax arrangements and the threat of Brexit, then we've really got to do something now. And if you think about it on the other side of it, and I plea for the panelists to support me in this, if we embrace this with Brexit coming up, we could get all European tourists the ability to claim their VAT back. And that means we could double the tourist industry from Europe after Brexit and become a major destination for everybody in Europe who wants to go on holiday. The opportunity is huge, and it's such a missed opportunity for this country. So I wanted to highlight it to everybody on this call and plead to your panel for their optimism and help to try and get us to change this awful decision.
David, could I just ask you, you must have worked with my friend Ron Khalifa.
Oh, I did, yes. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, Ron's a lovely, lovely man. And we were talking a little while ago, actually, because obviously they just sold WorldPay again for $51 billion. And I was saying, how come I didn't get some of that, Ron? But he was quite
very good friend. Guy. So can you, I mean, I've heard and read about the reasons why they want to take this move, the government. What is their reasoning for removing this measure?
Well, you know, I think they're just a bit busy at the moment is the real answer. I don't think people have thought through the consequences. You know, what you've got is every single retailer in London, in Edinburgh, in Liverpool, in Leeds, you know, they're all screaming about this now. And it isn't just Selfridges or Harrods that are going to suffer, right? It's every single small shop on a high street which doesn't get another sale, another precious sale from a tourist that's going to arrive.
No, now, I do understand. I understand that. What is the government's reasoning for wanting to take this away from what you've heard?
Well, they said that the whole process of claiming a VAT refund is too complicated. That's one of their first reasons. And that's not really true. You just fill in a piece of paperwork, or you could do it digitally. We have a digital solution now. And you could just submit that form in the way that everybody does on the internet. So it's not that difficult to do anymore. The other thing is they seem to think that everybody will claim VAT refunds for very small purchases. And realistically, that doesn't just happen. You know, it's bigger purchases that people do it for because that's what you can be bothered to do, right? It's worth the admin to get the refund. So the benefit of it coming is actually understated by that thinking. The other thing that they've done is they've said, oh, well, we don't really need for tourists to have a refund in the country as they leave the country, which is predominantly what happens. You get it at the airport, or you submit a form at the airport and then you get it on your credit card afterwards. You can just have the goods shipped to you in your home country. Well, there are two problems with that. You know, if you're a tourist and you want to buy a nice watch in Watches of Switzerland, who were in the Times yesterday talking about how much damage this will do to their business, and you want to wear it now. You don't want it sent to your home country so that you then get it 3 weeks later and it may get lost in the post. And you don't actually want to pay import duties on it as it arrives in the country. And that is part of the benefit of this system, which applies in all the major countries at the moment. So the solution we've got is ridiculous.
David, maybe there's an opportunity, and we're talking about the collaborative opportunities to deliver a strong message. So clearly what you're referring to cuts across a number of different industries, because it affects, well, it affects tourism, so that affects hospitality, it's not just retail, it's everything. And one of the areas, and I reiterate, it's not that a particular message gets lost and doesn't have any validity if it comes by itself, but the strength comes in bringing together a few different industries, and there are a whole number of bodies, and I would recommend that if it was brought up through the body, so the Business Action Council is taking ideas that have filtered up from the memberships. So if you have particular trade bodies and organizations, you need to be advocating for them to be championing this message, but try and do it across the organizations, and you're welcome to be in contact and see, there's quite a number of organizations that we have that probably would be interested in this specific point. But what we've been doing mostly is trying to see those ideas that percolate up, because they have such a strong wealth of information, data, because it isn't just about a feeling. You have to evidence clearly, so that government can see the statistics and understand things and prioritize, because there's a lot of things that are happening, as you say. I think it'd be a little bit simplistic to say that it's just that they're too busy, but I would absolutely accept that there are multiple challenges at this time, and they do need to prioritize. And if this is an area of obvious interest, what one has to do is come up with a solution and present it as effectively as possible. So I would welcome you doing that through the organizations, through CBI and other organizations, that it gets tabled and says, can you see, here's the evidence, here's the potential positive impact by advocating for this solution. Let's get this done. And we have Prime Minister Nalok Sharma, and then coming now shortly, Rishi, to come and talk to us as the Business Action Council about what are the things that are of major concern. If this is one of those things, then advocate for it within the trade bodies and organizations, and we will make sure that that lands.
That would be great. And actually,
I'll follow up straight away, David. I'll follow up with the CBI straight away on this.
Fantastic. I mean, Shalini, I've sent through to Shalini, actually. We've done a piece of research with the industry, with retail, with our competitors, actually, in this space. And that's what the 93% of visitors less likely to spend money comes from, right? This is a robust, big piece of research.
Right. That's the evidence that Maurice is asking for.
The evidence and the data. So any help you can give us, we will be absolutely eternally grateful.
Charlie, if you could forward that to me, then I'll follow up straight away. Thank you. Thanks a lot, David. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And Lord Bilimoria, if we can work together on pushing this agenda, I would be very happy for us to do that with you.
Thank you very much, and thanks again for this event. It's really very, very, very helpful.
Thank you, David. Thanks for raising it. And I'll ask Yunus Malik to speak next, and that'll be followed, if I may, by Emmanuel Esprit, followed by Robin Carlyle, Julie, and then Lance Foreman. But please keep raising your hand in the chat function, because I'm kind of pivoting between the Q&A and the chat function. So it'd be great to just use that one. So Yunus, would you like to briefly introduce yourself? I'm going to ask you to keep it brief, because we'd like to get through as many questions as possible. Yunus, are you there?
Hello, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
For whatever peculiar reason, Shalini, it lets you rejoin the conversation once you're joining. So you should ask your tech team to please look into that, because that was happening the last time as well.
Okay.
Shalini, thank you very much for arranging distinguished panel members again. Lord Bilimoria, I attended last time you were here as well. And Maurice, it's a pleasure hearing your entrepreneur journey through life. First of all, I'm based up in Scotland, and as a proud Scotsman, we feel that the Westminster is not always listening to medium and small sized businesses. So I would humbly request for both of you, if you could find some time in your schedule to participate in a call like this with the Scottish Chamber of Commerce, with the members, or our local Scottish Chamber of Commerce, that would be extremely helpful. So you can hear it from entrepreneurs who are actually going through the difficult time. Maurice, to you, I'm currently involved. I invest in startups. I'm currently involved with 2 businesses, and one of them I will dare to say it will be the next trillion-dollar company over the next 5 to 10 years. And I'm extremely confident in saying that. It will eliminate all plastic gift cards and membership cards. It's a one app that you can use all over the globe. And that's a shout out to everybody else who's on this call. If they would like to discuss this in detail, Shalini's got all my contact details, and I'll be happy to discuss it in detail. And also from an environmental point of view, there's now technology available that literally for every purchase in UK that you do, you can use this app with your bank payment, that it can give you the full carbon footprint that you can also offset in that particular app. So if you're talking about changing technology, changing what's happening on this planet, then we already have things that can really help with this. So my main question is relating to the smaller entrepreneurs. They're really struggling. And the loans that Shalini has been instrument in arranging or getting the government to set up with Lord Bilimoria and other organizations, they're great and good for people who've been in business for 2-3 years, but that does not help new businesses. And there are brilliant people out there who are really, really struggling. So I would like to hear what are your thoughts around that, and what is the government or your organizations willing to do to help these entrepreneurs? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Yunus. I'm delighted you asked the question. The one thing I left out of thinking that I really wanted to touch on, you have raised now. So well done you for bringing up a very important point, because as I've said repeatedly, this is very much focused on smaller businesses and earlier stage enterprises. And indeed, Entrepreneurial Scotland is one of the back members, as are the Chambers of Commerce, and I'd be delighted. And there are, they're fully involved in what's going on. And one of the things that actually was spearheaded, so that one of the, like Shalini has been chair of one of the working groups, the head of Entrepreneurial Scotland was running a working group on peer-to-peer exchange. So Karen mentioned at the outset in his remarks that we are together in something called a forum, and it's a small group of us who get together on a regular basis. And this kind of experience of sharing amongst one's peers, so it's not mentoring, this is sitting with people like yourself going through the same challenges, or maybe a challenge that they had years ago that they could share what they've learned, and vice versa. Very, very important. And so Sandy, who was running Entrepreneurial Scotland, chaired the working group peer-to-peer. The Treasury agreed to give £20 million to BEIS. BEIS has used that money to go through the LEPs, the local enterprise partnerships. And whereas loans may not always be appropriate for very early stage startups, because it's very hard, and here I would admit that there are difficulties in evaluating, because many people have great ideas. Whether or not they can get beyond the idea and make it happen that's the big challenge. And so you'd be foolhardy to fund any and every entrepreneur with any and every idea. So you do need to have some sort of filter to ensure that only those that survive the test of the marketplace, or maybe the ability of the people, a lot of it is luck as well. There's many different factors that make the difference between success and failure. But one which we can all tap into is working with one another. And so this government has finally, after years of advocacy now, has agreed to give that £20 million, and we're now that is being filtered through. Shalini, I think you're also involved in helping to support some of the cohorts. We're doing a number of them through my foundation and through other back members. So they've welcomed now the ability to 10,000 entrepreneurs to sign up, and you can go on, oh gosh, one of you will have to look up, I don't know what the link is, there is a link to peer networking something or other, and there you can tap in to entrepreneurs primarily in your geographic area, because it really helps if you kind of know the context where people are working. But there's also industry ones that are happening around the country. Now, it happens in Scotland that they have their own, because of the devolved government, their own setup. It's not done through the LEPs, and the same thing for Wales and Northern Ireland. But that ability to tap into other entrepreneurs, a bit like what E2E is and the other business organizations, it is an ability to have connectivity and encourage people to share their experiences. So whereas you might not be alone, there is support there, and I would suggest that people tap into it where they can.
And could I ask Lord Bilimoria and Maurice yourself, would you be able to have a look at your very busy schedule and hopefully find some time to speak to the entrepreneurs in Scotland through one of these organizations like the Scottish Chamber of Commerce or our local Chamber of Commerce?
I think that certainly for my part, I would say that if it was a collaborative thing as opposed to coming from a specific business representative.
Of course, yeah. Like Scottish Chamber of Commerce, yeah.
It was key. And to rope in, as I say, there are a number of fantastic organisations that work in Scotland and would be happy to participate in that way.
Thank you very much.
I've spoken in Scotland many times, and I'll always, if somebody asks me if I can, I'll be there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Shalini.
Thank you, Eunice. I'd like to go on to Emmanuel Esprit now, please. If it'll take a couple of seconds to make her live, and she has a question. Emmanuel, are you there? She'll join us in a second, Maurice, I'm sure.
Good morning. Thank you, Shalini. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you. Thank you, Emmanuel. Good morning.
Right. Thank you so much. Good morning, Shalini, and thank you very much for the opportunity. So I'm Emmanuel Esprit, the CEO of eVoyages Limited. We're an inbound tour operator, and I'm delighted to meet you both, Lord Bilimoria and Maurice Ostro. I've also recently joined the SME Council at the CBE, and I must say that I'm truly impressed with the work that CBE does. It's no surprise to anyone, I'm sure, to hear that the inbound tourism sector is on its knees. If I talk specifically about my business, we've not seen a penny of revenue since March. Our main association, UK Inbound, is obviously actively lobbying the government, but yet we are appearing to constantly fall through the cracks. And the latest job extension scheme doesn't really offer much viable options for us, because we're expected to contribute to 1/3 of employees' salaries for the hours that they're not working, but without any income, I can't see that being feasible. So redundancies will be inevitable. At the same time, given the seasonality of our business, it's 12 months worth of trading that we are losing, because the peak of our activity takes place between April and September. That's all been wiped out by COVID. We're being offered to take on debt. I can't see that being a long-term solution. And we're not getting the local grants from the councils because we're not public facing. So there's not an awful lot of support out there for us. And so I've got two questions for you both. Is A, do you have any tourism and travel businesses on the Business Action Council? Because actually, when you take inbound and outbound tourism jointly, we are worth 60 billion to the economy. And actually, there is all the knock-on effect. If visitors, as David Sear pointed out earlier on, if there are no international visitors, then retail is suffering, hospitality is suffering. Covent Garden is literally a ghost town at the minute, which is quite heartbreaking.
I'll just ask you to ask your questions.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yes.
So I wanted to know if there are any travel and tourism businesses on the Business Action Council. And the second part was, is there any advice in terms of the actions that we're taking to get through to the government and make sure that we're not falling through the cracks, please? Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Manuel.
Yeah, I would say, Manuel, that firstly, it's messy. So not only was the Business Action Council messy in that it all kind of, everyone just jumped in, within each organization, so CBI, and I'll allow Karen to speak to this particular point, but within multiple organizations, your sector is being represented at different levels. So that could be happening through the Federation of Small Businesses, the CBI, and the chambers, many, many different organizations. There are travel sectors as well. So it isn't clean. It isn't like there's one organization that represents all inbound. Well, you know, I mean, I don't need to tell you, there's multiple people and they're all competing and things like that. So my own suggestion is just crowd in those people and try in a mini sense to get, like was being said earlier in regards to David's first question, if you want to advocate for something, it's really down to you. I mean, what we can do is funnel things, but it needs to percolate from the ground up. It is not going to happen top down. So what you need to do is speak to the organizations, and there will be multiple. I will say right from the outset, you will have multiple organizations. Some who will not want to talk to the others. It's their attitude, and that is just sadly part of life. And all you can do is focus on the ones that are willing to collaborate together, get them to come together. Again, like I was saying to David, data, you must bring the facts, you must bring in also very clear and distinct suggestions, because if the idea is, help us, we're in trouble, sorry, everybody's in trouble. Be specific. What simple, clear, defined intervention would help your industry, and what's the potential cost to the exchequer? Because at the end of the day, we have, sadly, it is a prioritization. It's like triage at this stage. We've got a mess in so many areas. So those are my suggestions. And if you can get your organizations to come together, and you're more than welcome to either through Shalini or myself, and I'm sure Karen's always open through CBI, to receive those messages, but it needs to be packaged by those who understand it best, because the devil is in the detail. I mean, if I went in today to number 10 and said, oh, you know, I heard this thing, it would mean nothing and go nowhere. It only matters when you come with a complete package. Here's the problem, here's the cost of that problem, and here's the potential cost of the solution to that problem, and therefore the positive impact that it could have. And genuinely, this is not a manual, it's not some one person with a sort of bee in their bonnet. It is coming from a wide variety of sources, and there's evidence behind it. So good luck with it, and be in touch, and if we can, we'll help to advocate for it.
Thank you very much. I mean, I would say that actually one of the work I've been focusing on is trying to get UK Inbound and the CBI to work together, and it's already happening. We've got all the evidence, which I'll quite happily share with you. And if there is a way that the Business Action Council can also then support our efforts, then that would be really marvelous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel.
Thank you for your work at the CBI, and we'll keep following up on this. And by the way, tourism overall is over £100 billion.
Oh well, there you go. So I've understated it indeed.
And I speak on behalf of the tourists regularly in Parliament. It's such a vital industry for our country.
Absolutely.
And I know how much you must be suffering. It's terrible. I mean, and there are so many areas that have been left out of the support, and you know, the Chancellor has been very open saying I can't help everybody, but the reality is there are lots and lots of businesses, for whatever reason, you're one example, that have been left out of a lot of the measures, and the government is aware of this, and I would say with Maurice's advice, absolutely right, in you know, keep on trying, and what I can assure you is the government does listen. If they can, they will help.
Great. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I'm going to move on now. If Robin Carlyle, are you there? Might take a minute just to get him live. He has two questions, and then we'll move on then after Robin to Julie, Lance Foreman. We have Tony Banks and Adam Durant. So Robin, are you live? Yeah. You need to unmute.
Okay.
Hi, Robin.
Good morning. Can you hear me all?
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. I apologise about the penguins in the background. That's something to do with my Zoom calls with my grandchildren. They fixed it. I don't know how to unfix it. My questions, I appreciate your time and enjoyed listening so far. But the two questions I tabled really linked together. I'm chairman of a business called Star Live. We're an international live event business working literally across the globe. But of course, most events, with the exception actually of some contracts we have in China, are pretty much dead. And we have done a great job, I believe, in maintaining the business as best we can in much the same way as I know a number of our colleagues in the industry have done. However, we're all struggling with what seems to be a mismatch of thinking with the government, where most recently we see local authorities able to have the power to close down events like Boat 2020 in Southampton, which was all ready to go, had all been signed off. And then shockingly, it seems, whilst they have a COVID responsibility, they obviously have no responsibility, it seems, the city council and other local councils for maintaining jobs. I have an issue with my own local council on this matter as well. They just don't seem to understand the need to maintain, let alone generate employment. Coupled with that question, what can we do, what more can we do as an industry to prevent this situation where events occasionally seem to be happening, but generally they're not allowed to happen. And then we have a situation in the last few days where we see the Royal Albert Hall, bless all that anybody has anything to do with it, able to sell 36,000 tickets for a closed building series of concerts, and yet in the open air sports activities were not allowed to generate any, if you like, bums on seats. They're not allowed to sell any hospitality. There's absolutely nothing at all. Now, the two things don't seem to sit, as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure many in our industry are concerned, alongside each other. It's a complete mismatch of thinking.
Thanks,
so
Robin.
that's my 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you.
I have no specific understanding of this detail, and fortunately, the Business Action Council as an entity does not need to analyse each area, because we have so many people like yourselves who are so in depth in their expertise and knowledge of their specific areas, and they have the organizations that they can feed that through. So just like I've mentioned earlier, the best way forward, and there are undoubtedly going to be anomalies that crop up, that when in the fullness of time, if you understood them and if you're prepared for them, you say, we wouldn't have done that, because people are being reactive, and politicians have to react to political realities. We're fortunately not politicians, so we're able to sort of look more dispassionately and hopefully objectively at what the issues are. So I would just suggest, like what I've mentioned earlier, bring that data, bring it to the organizations that are most appropriate, Robin, for your industry, and do it as widely as possible. So if you were taking this advocacy and championing it through a very narrow organization, it will be hard to land quickly. I'm not saying it won't ever be heard, but it will be in that noise that's being fed into multiple departments. And so the best way forward is just to take that, create the case, bring together the groups that can help and support and ensure that that message is heard loudly and clearly, and bring it to us, and we will, well, the organizations will do that, because it's the back members, including E2E, that are, come with their not only their problems, because it's very easy to throw a problem at people. You've got to throw the problem with a solution, or we'll wait for them to work out the solution, which I suspect will take longer than if you did it. So my suggestion is bring it together as a package, find the people to be your champions, your advocates, and create enough momentum behind it so that we can make a reasoned and strong case for what you're advocating.
Rowan, I've been aware of this area for a long time. We've made representations to the Chancellor, for example, for the Asian wedding industry is huge. I mean, thousands of people attend a wedding quite often, and they've had no business at all. The catering, events catering, so many people, and a lot of the health measures have not helped them. And so one is the health situation doesn't allow the events to take place, and secondly, they're not getting the help when, so a part-time job support scheme where you work for 1/3 of the time and you can get support from the government is not really appropriate if you can't work at all. I'm totally aware of this, and we can continue to try and bring it to the notice. But I tell you one solution is if we can get mass testing in, then everything can go ahead as normal. We can have the economy firing on all cylinders. That's the solution until we get a vaccine.
Yeah. You did it, Karen. You managed to get us back onto testing, because that is, and this is the beauty, and Robin, this is the point. If you have somebody, and Karen is like a dog with a bone, right? If he's got his point, he will not let go. And that's what makes this happen. That success comes from that single-minded dedication, constantly coming back to your point, but doing it as he does, with facts, with figures, with solutions. This is what we need, how we need it. And if you can advocate in that manner, and he's right, absolutely, it's not out of the blue, he mentions it.
No, absolutely.
Can I quickly ask?
Robin, sorry, there's a whole queue of
Okay.
people. Very, very fast, if you didn't mind. Is that okay? Okay. I'm going to move on now, if I may, to Julie. Robin, maybe you could email me the question and I'll share it with Maurice and Lord Bilimoria, if you wouldn't mind.
Put it in the QA or chat, so we'll read it.
Yeah. Julie, are you there? Because I know Tony Banks has a question on testing. I'm trying to get through the questions as quickly as we can. Julie? Give it one more second. If not, maybe we could move on to Lance Foreman and then Tony Banks. Is Lance Foreman live? Julie's there. Julie, just need to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Lance.
Hello.
And we can hear Julie and Lance. So Julie, do you want to go first quickly?
Yeah, so I think you've actually quite eloquently answered a lot of what I was going to ask. I love the fact that optimism of the lifeblood of the entrepreneur. I'm from In Churches, which is a charity in Yorkshire, and we're always trying to find ways to develop sustainability and innovation in our sector, using entrepreneurial work to collaborate and connect. And this has shown us, the pandemic has shown us how the third sector has risen to support the country along with everybody else in the fields of food and mental health. And for me, I think it's shown us exciting ways in which we can diversify. So my question would be that how can we continue to forge strategic links with industry and other entrepreneurs? And can our speakers, which I'm sure the answer is yes, see the value in charities seizing the opportunities presented to us to be able to support communities that we look after? And how can we further position ourselves to be part of solutions? Because I can see us massively being part of the solution rather than just mopping up the problems.
I'm so delighted that you raised it, because there is a convergence that's now happening. So I raised the peer-to-peer support that BEIS is giving through the local enterprise partnerships at £20 million, which we hope that entrepreneurs will put their hands up, say we want to be part of these cohorts and learn from one another. We're doing that also in the faith sector. So within one of the areas, in fact a couple of the areas around the country, we've actually reached out to the faith communities, because some of the most impacted negatively from the economics of what we're going through are the BAME communities. And very often they have a strong faith background, and there's a lack of trust in government from the countries that they've come from. So they're not always naturally inclined to connect up with, and Karen mentioned that we had Dido Harding, Baroness Harding, running Test and Trace, which we had a whole group within Faiths United. So this is slightly separate, but it's where we're reaching through faith leaders in the communities, because there's a trust between the faith leaders and the local entrepreneurs, and saying to them, bring us the people that are troubled and we will help them, bringing them together, providing them support, mentorship, and so forth. So yes, there is a connectivity between the communities on the faith side and businesses. They're not, separate. It's all part of our lives. Karen is here, but he's also Zoroastrian. We all have multiple identities. And just have to, use that and do reach out to us, and certainly through Faith United, we should engage with some of the work that we're doing to be able to provide the best support we can through the communities that do so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm afraid we've got 4 minutes left. I have to apologise, Tony, Adam, Alison, Alex, Rocha, if you wouldn't mind to send your questions through. I think some of them I can see in the Q&A, but if there's anything specific, I will put them forward to Lord Bilimoria and Maurice, or whoever's relevant, to get back to you. I apologise, we can't take them live now. Lance, I really apologise, because we can see you, but we've got 4 minutes left. So I will also share the results of the poll separately, because I don't think I'm going to ask Lord Bilimoria to do the closing. Maurice, I think we probably needed another half an hour with both of you, Lord Bilimoria. So I apologise, we've got 4 minutes.
Lance has got a stonker of a... I think we're saved by time, I think, but we'll do.
Lance, ask your question quickly. Ask your question quickly, Lance.
Go on.
Well, I was just going to say that Maurice quite rightly recognised that entrepreneurs really see opportunity and change. And one of the biggest changes that our country is facing in a generation is is Brexit. And Lord Bilimoria and indeed the CBI were very anti-Brexit. So I want to know whether they have changed and now see the opportunities. And I'm interested in how they think that we can seize the opportunity, or do they just think we're doomed?
No, I say for Karen, before Karen says, I will tell you, because it's true, because he would say it, but I'm objectively telling you that Karen's view has always been with me. I might have been Remain. This is a democracy. We made a choice. Now that's no longer a question. It's now, let's just get on with it and do the very best we can. And Karen is literally leading in this. He's not this, he's going to say it for himself, but it's true. And we have these conversations all the time. He said, let's get it done and let's make it work. True?
It's as simple as that. It's decisions made. It doesn't matter whether you're for Remain or Leave. We've left, and we've now got to get a deal. 77% of business want a deal, and that's the priority, is to help the government get a deal. And that's my priority. That's what I've been doing, and I will continue to do, and to help in every way, and to make the most of the situation. And there are lots of benefits. And there are lots of benefits. So
yeah, and look, whether Karen and I are very close friends. On Brexit, we took different sides of the debate, but it did never. And this is the important point. Real debate is conversation where you respect one another and you understand each other's arguments. Because in a poor debater is someone who doesn't listen, they take their view and that's it. We both have had different perspectives, and I absolutely respect and understand his perspective. We had a different one, but now we're beyond that. Now we have to all work together to make it happen, and we will.
Right.
Thanks, Lance. Hopefully that gave you a straightforward answer to your question, but it was a great question. Lord Bilimoria, I'm going to ask you to do the closing, if you wouldn't mind, and then I know you need to go, but we will try and share the results of the poll.
Share the results. Why don't you share this quickly? I'd like to see them.
Stephen, can we do that quickly straight away? Great. So for number 1, it's events. Number 2, we have a winning. What's number 2? I've got it. I've moved on. Meeting the right like-minded people. Number 3, we have sort of equal, but startup and SME data intelligence, it's what's needed. And 43% of our audience are needing access to discounted offices. And current Lord Bilimoria, 63% of our community online today are interested in CBI membership.
And so you should, because as I said, if you want to get your points across, you need through E2E, through CBI, through any organization, the more you connect up and the more the weight of your arguments will be heard.
Absolutely agreed with that, Maurice. Thank you so much. Lord Bilimoria, I'm going to hand over to you for 2 minutes.
Great. So thank you. Sorry, all of you couldn't get your questions in. We've had a rich discussion. Thank you, Shalini, for organizing this into the E2E team. Maurice, as always, you're inspirational and we've learned so much from you. And thank you for all that you're doing for all of us, actually, for the whole business community in the UK. And you continually, the message that came through from you is entrepreneurs get things done. So there's no point coming up and even in discussion. If you've got a problem, where's the solution? Let's work together to come for the solution. The optimism that David says that you show has come through. All the issues that you've raised, I've made a note of some of them, which I'm going to follow up straight away with the CBI. So this has been really, really productive, and thank you very much. By the way, I'm very, very optimistic we're going to be out of this, and whether through a combination of testing, vaccines, we will get there, and it's only a question of time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lord Bilimoria. Thank you, Maurice. Everyone, tomorrow evening, as I mentioned, 6 o'clock, we have Lawson Muncaster and we have John McGlynn and RP Podar. So I hope you can join us. And please do talk to us about these challenges. We will do our best to work with David Sear, Emmanuel, and with the CBI on all of these issues. Lord Bilimoria, thank you very much. Maurice, a huge pleasure. And thanks, as Lord Bilimoria said, for everything that you're doing for the UK. Really
and you both for being such inspirational leaders in helping the entrepreneurial community. It's so needed, and it's a pleasure for me to provide whatever support I can, whenever, to help in your efforts. So thank you both.
Thank you very much. Thank you
very much.
Everyone, have a good day. See you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.